Okay, time to get that review going. What the... Who the heck are you? Hey, Snazzy. Have you seen anything strange?
Well, I saw Wilford Brimley do the Charleston with a Dalek and a Catgirl once.
Okay, let me focus that question a bit. Have you seen a guy dressed all in brown with a top hat and one of those hook-nosed plague doctor masks?
Sounds familiar. Want me to look into it?
Yeah, look into it for me, will ya? I have a video I have to do. May as well do the introduction then. A lot of people see giant monster movies as nothing but campy, mindless entertainment, but the fact is they can actually be effective vehicles for social commentary. Movies of the 50s, like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Them, and Godzilla, to name but a few, were dramatic protests against wanton nuclear testing, where the negative effects of radiation were represented by giant destructive creatures. The original King Kong had a subtle commentary about exploiting the resources of foreign lands, but that was mostly overshadowed by the spectacle of seeing a giant gorilla rip a T-Rex's head in half. Godzilla vs. Hedorah has a very poorly executed environmentalist message, and its day of reckoning will come. One day, you sucker, one day. But one movie that is often overlooked in this regard is Gorgo, a 1961 British attempt to get in on Godzilla mania. Most dissertations on the cultural relevance of atomic age dragons ignore Gorgo, or at most include it as a footnote that boldly proclaims, yes, this movie does indeed exist, without discussing its deeper significance. I admit, for a long time, I didn't realize Gorgo had any deeper meaning to it either. But as someone with a lot of free time on his hands and a penchant for overthinking things, I believe I've figured something out, and I want to present my findings to you as a bit of a discussion starter. If you haven't seen Gorgo, here's the movie in a nutshell. In the wake of a storm caused by an underwater volcano, a sea monster is discovered living off the coast of Ireland. The creature, a 2-story tall dinosaur previously unknown to science, is captured by fishermen looking to make a fortune by selling it. The creature is bought by a circus owner who calls him Gorgo and puts him on display in London for everyone to come and gawk at. Eventually, a pair of scientists studying Gorgo come to a disturbing conclusion. The creature that has been captured is just a baby, which could mean there are other much larger versions of him still out in the water. This theory becomes a terrifying fact when Gorgo's 200-foot-tall mother appears, making a beeline for London, intent on saving her child. Spoilers to follow from this point, so if you want to see the movie without being spoiled, go watch it, then come back. It's pretty easy to find on YouTube. For the rest of us, who either have seen the movie or just don't care, the discussion can continue. Now, for the most part, Gorgo seems like a pretty straightforward, if somewhat campy, giant monster movie. But there are a couple of anomalies that make it very unusual. First and most obviously is the fact that the monsters survive the film. In most giant monster movies, heck, in most monster movies of any sort, the monster dies at the end, usually thanks to some remarkable new device being implemented for just this occasion. Sometimes it's viewed as a triumph of human ingenuity, other times it's the tragic sacrifice of a misunderstood creature. By the end of this movie, once Mother Gorgo has recovered Little Gorgo, the two monsters leave without causing any more damage. Not only that, but mankind allows them to leave without trying to attack them, having decided that it's better to leave these creatures alone. The number of monster movies that end that way can be counted on one hand. Another anomaly concerns the characters. Gorgo's primary human cast is entirely male, which again is brought up whenever the movie is mentioned but rarely elaborated on. There aren't even any love interests for any of them. All the women who do appear are nameless background extras. In fact, the only significant female character in the entire film is Mother Gorgo. So, what exactly am I building towards here? I said the movie is socially relevant somehow, after all, so what does all that rambling stuff have to do with anything? My point is this. Gorgo is actually about feminism. Well, specifically, it's about early 60s feminism, which is vastly different from modern feminism, and that has to be taken into account when discussing it. But even so, this has to do with feminism. The fact that the cast is exclusively male is my primary piece of evidence. This is a man's world of business and science where women have no part in either. Men are making all of the decisions, including what's to be done with little Gorgo. Heck, even the name Gorgo has a misogynistic undercurrent to it. The movie explains that it's basically the word Gorgon with the N removed so it can be trademarked. Gorgons are creatures from Greek mythology. Traditionally, there are 3, but Medusa is the most famous. And those who know the story of Medusa also know how bloody infuriating it is. In the myth, Medusa is a beautiful woman who acts as a priestess of Artemis, and as such, she is required to remain a virgin. Unfortunately, Poseidon, god of the sea, can't keep his little trident holstered and forces himself on Medusa within Artemis's temple, committing a dual sacrilege by defiling a place of worship and the worship leader. Rather than punish Poseidon, however, Artemis punishes Medusa, turning her into a hideous snake-haired monster that turns people to stone by looking at them, thus rendering her undesirable and untouchable for eternity. Basically, what the myth is saying is that it was Medusa's fault she got molested because she was so darn sexy. The ancient Greek gods were jerks. Now, the ancient Greeks probably didn't think anything of this, but in our modern age of enlightenment where everyone is sophisticated as heck, people are appalled to learn that this is how the legend plays out. In modern times, people view the Gorgon in a sympathetic light. And in this movie, we see the word Gorgon being applied to a helpless creature being exploited by men. This brings us back to Mother Gorgo, our leading lady, even if she is a dinosaur. Once we look at this movie as being about feminism, the attack on London at the end takes on a whole new meaning. The intent may be to save the child, but the symbolism is a woman lashing out against the world of men for its pig-headedness and the damage it's causing future generations. If this is how man's world is run, then it should be torn down and set ablaze. Thus saith the giant green dinosaur with wiggly fish ears. You know, the more I think about it, the more Mother Gorgo starts to sound like the kaiju equivalent of Wonder Woman. Then again, I guess that's not an entirely fair comparison, is it? There are some major differences. One is strong, authoritative, and unstoppable as she strikes out against those who would oppress the weak and helpless. The other is scantily clad and often associated with bondage imagery. I'm just saying that maybe Mother Gorgo would have been a slightly better choice to put on the cover of Miss Magazine. One question remains, though. If Gorgo is actually about women's lib, why has nobody spoken about it before? And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. I've done the research. No one has ever mentioned Gorgo and feminism in the same sentence before I have, so what gives? Well, that's probably because it was completely unintentional. The filmmakers wanted their own Godzilla, and she turned out to be a reptilian suffragette without anyone noticing. Assuming that this is true, and let's be honest, it most likely is, does that undermine everything I've said? Is my theory that Gorgo has a feminist theme to it rendered invalid? I say no, and not just because this is my theory we're talking about. You see, artists put hidden meanings in their work without realizing it all the time. Even if they do have an intended meaning, the audience might walk away with something completely different depending on how it comes across. Ergo, If Gorgo wasn't intended to have feminist undertones, that doesn't mean those undertones don't exist. They simply got there by accident, and nobody noticed them until I pointed them out to you. So what do you think? Am I onto something, or am I completely off my rocker seeing connections where none exist? I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment or make your own video response and let's get this conversation started. Until such time as we...
Hey, OmniViewer. I was just on the DeviantArt page, link in the description, and I came across this picture. I don't remember putting that there, and it kind of fits the description. Is this the guy you... What the... Hello?
Oh, everything smells blue and tastes rectangular. What happened?
I think we might be haunted.
Oh boy. A video about feminism on the internet. I see only good coming from this.